Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this event. The Greens are setting out our stall for this election, the Green Guarantees. My name is Jeremy. I was a candidate in the county council elections, and in a few minutes Stuart, who's our candidate for the parliamentary election, will be expanding on the theme of why vote Green. What are our pledges? I joined the Green Party basically because I came to the conclusion that our system is broken, that our political, economic and financial systems are all not rising to the challenge, which is the main challenge which is facing us, is how to live sustainably on this planet into the future. And going around, knocking on doors, canvassing as part of this election, people are weighing up which party to give their vote to. I have to say the most common quandary they seem to have is whether Labour or Lib Dem is the person to vote for. We don't seem to meet many people who are wondering about voting Conservative. That's just Cambridge for you. But actually, my view is that in the face of that challenge, how we live sustainably, all three of the other parties are just not saying anything, which is why there were members of the Green Party in London today protesting about where is the environment gone. So actually the Green Party is the only party that is recognising that challenge, has the vision to face up to it, and is developing its policies in order to do that, which Stuart will now explain to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy. So what I'm going to do, if that's all right, is just talk for 5 or 10 minutes about the Green Guarantees, which is the guarantees the National Green Party have launched at this election, building on our manifestos from before, and talk about how those affect what will happen in Cambridge in the coming years, and why these guarantees are the guarantees that we're making to solve the big issues that are facing the country at the moment. And then Kerry Galloway, who's one of our very good local candidates in Trumpington, is going to join me, and we'll answer some questions about how these policies might affect Cambridge and any other questions you've got about the national policies. So there'll be plenty of time to take questions and things at the end. So we've got 9 days now, thank God it's only 9 more days, until the election that's going to shape so many of these big issues and the direction of our country in years to come. Every election is obviously important, but this election, almost more so than ever before, is going to shape the direction of the country in the coming 30 to 40 years. And there are very big issues at stake. Tomorrow, the leaders of the different parties, and maybe not the leaders of the Conservative, the Labour Party, are going to come here to Cambridge to debate these national issues. And some of those people are going to be the people making those big decisions about how our country changes and whether we'll meet those challenges that we face. And what are those challenges? Obviously, the big issue, amongst many other big issues, but the biggest in the forefront of people's minds at the moment is Brexit and what that will mean for the UK. Immediately, right away, that means, do we have the security and stability for the 3 million EU citizens living in the UK who a year on from the referendum still don't have any certainty about their future, which is disgraceful. And that's a huge issue that's at stake. We've got the issue of what Brexit will mean for businesses, for the economy, for higher education institutions and our universities, for our public services, and for our own right to travel, to work, to study in Europe as well. And also what Brexit will mean for the climate, whether we will honour our international obligations on climate change, or whether we'll follow Donald Trump in breaking away and failing to live up to those challenges. But Brexit is just one issue amongst many at this election. Another huge issue is the economy. Essentially, our economy still hasn't recovered from the financial crash of 2008. We've got growing levels of inequality and poverty. Increasingly, we're being told that we're unable to sustain public services. We don't have the money to fund the NHS, to fund schools, to fund libraries. And we'll have to make decisions about whether we fund social care properly or whether we do take people's homes off them for paying for their care if they have dementia or Alzheimer's. Increasingly, our economy is unable to give some people the basics of what they need. That's the reason why there's a food bank in Cambridge City which gave out 5,600 parcels last year, and why young people and students are looking at a future where they might not ever be able to secure a good, affordable home for themselves. So there's big economic issues at stake here in this election as well. And as Jeremy alluded to, Caroline Lucas and other members of the Green Party today held a little flash mob protest outside Downing Street to point out that the environment has simply not been talked about in this election. It's barely come up at any of the hustings that I've gone to. People are telling me on the doorsteps, well, given Brexit and everything else that's going on, we might need to forget about the climate for a while. And that simply cannot happen. There's a staggering decrease in biodiversity in this country, there's a plunging amount of planned investment in renewable energy, and we know that we've only got 4 years to change course seriously as a planet before we blow the chance of keeping global warming to maybe the 1.5 degrees that we need to keep it at before the climate change becomes rapidly uncontrollable. So those decisions will need to be made in the next Parliament, so we have to talk about the climate, it cannot be forgotten. So to focus specifically on what Jeremy was talking about, the fact that it's mainstream politics and all political parties, not just the Conservatives, have got to answer questions about how politics has led us into this situation and failing to live up to those challenges. And these are issues that need solving for the people of Cambridge. Brexit is a particular issue here in Cambridge because so many people here rely on trade and rely on business or on funding from the European Union, and we don't know what's going to happen as the negotiations go forward. So many people in Cambridge, Cambridge, as I've said many times, is actually one of the most unequal cities in the United Kingdom. We've got areas of the city where house prices are over £1 million each, but we have a food bank that gave out 5,600 parcels last year. So are we going to build that fairer economy to balance work more effectively and make sure that those on low incomes are supported? And will we be able to fund our local NHS? I work as a charge nurse at Adams Hospital. I've worked in social care before that, and we know that the NHS and social care are on the brink of collapse. Care homes are closing left, right and centre. Funding for the NHS is very stretched, and they want to save another £540 million a year from the NHS budget for Cambridge Town Peterborough by 2020. And I know that simply can't be delivered without costing lives and without threatening the care that people need. So are we going to make those decisions to save the NHS and care in Cambridge? And there's specific issues around the environment and how that affects Cambridge as well. The growth of the city, these planned 35,000 new homes, the encroachment of the city onto the green belt. Are we going to protect nature and wildlife and the green spaces that we value, or are we going to build a rapidly growing city where people can't afford to live and where there's no green spaces or places for people to go and relax? So the question at this election is whether we retreat and whether we offer half-hearted solutions to these challenges, whether we accept that we can't fund public services properly, or we do need to accept that free movement of people is going to end. And I'm glad to say I'm standing for a party that isn't offering half-hearted solutions. We're saying that when we're faced with these big challenges, we need big, bold, confident solutions to help us meet those challenges. So are we going to pander to anti-migrant rhetoric, to people saying that free movement has to end? Or are we going to be like the Greens in Holland or Austria or France who stood up and said, migration is a good thing, and they've beaten the far right in those elections recently? And I think we'll be able to do the same here if we're confident and stand up for what we believe in. Are we going to retreat from the difficulties funding our public services and accept that we can't afford a good NHS or we can't afford social care? Or are we going to say, actually, this country is almost richer than it ever has been in terms of private wealth? Are we going to ask people to pay their fair share and fund the NHS and fund care properly for people? And with Donald Trump in the White House making decisions about whether we honour our agreements on climate change, are we going to shrink from those commitments, or are we going to stride forward and actually seize the opportunities that come with dealing with climate change? If we want to insulate our homes properly to reduce fuel bills and end fuel poverty at the same time as reducing carbon emissions, whether we want to actually grasp the opportunities around building a low carbon economy and investing in renewable energy. And I'm glad to say that the Green Guarantee, which I don't have a copy of right here, but I'm sure lots of you are holding, shows ways that we can meet all those challenges. So, to sum up some of our key policies and some of our key pledges, I'm also proud to say that we're a party that's offering solutions for young people, because too many young people now feel burdened by debt and are worried about ever being able to get a home or being able to travel around Europe. And I'm glad to say that we stick to our commitment to abolish tuition fees and fund higher education through general progressive taxation, so that people can get higher education without worrying about paying off debt for the rest of their lives. We'll end unpaid internships and that horrible amount of insecure work for young people who need to be able to pay for themselves to go out and get that experience and get those jobs. We'll make sure that a fair day's work pays a fair day's wage and people are entitled to those opportunities. And we will provide the affordable housing and rebalancing of the housing market that means that people are able to go and get those homes and be able to afford secure, decent homes in the future as well. We'll reverse the housing benefit cuts for those under 21 so that people can move out and afford to rent their own homes. And we'll build 100,000 socially affordable homes every year, 100,000 of them every year by 2020, 2021 to rebalance the housing market. On the economy, we'll ensure that things are properly equal by creating a genuine minimum wage of £10 a year by 2020, 2021. And we'll reduce the income inequality by making companies pledge to have no more than 10 times difference between the lowest paid and the highest paid in any company to ensure that inequality is something they're focusing on. And we'll use the Royal Bank of Scotland, the people's owned Royal Bank of Scotland, to create a network of community and people's banks that lend to small businesses and lend to communities to drive investment, the kind of investment that we need. And we'll look at inventive ways of paying for that, firstly by cracking down on multinational tax avoidance and making sure that corporations pay their fair share, but also looking at innovative new ways of taxation such as a financial transactions tax or a wealth tax, which have already been used in other European countries very effectively to bring in more funds for public services. On those public services, we are the only party that's pledging to fully reverse NHS privatisation, to bring it all back into public hands and make sure that services are run in the interests of people and not of the private investors and shareholders in those companies. And we'll invest to end the deficit of hospitals and make sure that mental health funding is given equal priority to public health as well. And we've also pledged to end the education cuts that are threatening to take hundreds of pounds per pupil out of every Cambridge school by 2020-2021. And as I've talked about already, on the environment, we'll make those big commitments to do things that benefit both people and the planet, to make sure that we lead the way on tackling climate change and we don't fall behind other countries. We'll invest in insulating 9 million homes around the country, creating good green jobs, ending fuel poverty and lowering people's fuel bills. And we'll lead on investing in community and developing community energy schemes that allow renewables to expand around the country and take power away from the big 6 energy companies. And what would a Green MP actually mean for Cambridge and Cambridge City itself? As I've said, I would pledge to fight against any decrease in funding for the NHS and for social care, and to make sure that those cuts that are planned for the NHS are scrapped. It would mean more equality, less people having to rely on food banks, less people being sanctioned by the government for missing appointments or at the job centre or not applying for the jobs they've been told to apply for. It would mean more affordable housing, protection for people in the private rented sector, and it would mean investment in public transport and cycling and walking, so that we're not breathing polluted air and having the 250 people a year who die around Cambridge from air pollution. We would lead on tackling all those problems. And I'd like us to see Cambridge transformed into a place that's not falling behind, but a place that's actually leading the way on dealing with climate change. It's ridiculous that we have the University of Cambridge, this institution with investments all around the world and world-leading research, that's still investing millions and millions of pounds in fossil fuel industries at a time when we know we cannot burn more fossil fuels and still keep global warming in check. So let's turn Cambridge into a place that's actually investing in and leading the technologies of the future rather than the technologies of the past. And I'll wrap up now and let's take questions and talk with Kerry as well, but I also want to address the fact that we should be realistic about our prospects in this election as well. It's not all up to the Green Party. We can't achieve everything by ourselves, and we do face a difficult situation here in Cambridge where we've got a pro-European Lib Dem MP and a pro-European Labour MP as well. And we know that there are huge issues at stake in this election. We appreciate that more than anyone, which is why it's us that have taken the difficult decisions to stand down in a number of constituencies around the country so that we can beat the Conservatives. Because I work for the NHS and I've worked in care, I know how important it is that we do that, and I'm glad that we're the ones that have been grown up enough to stand aside and say, let's work together to beat the Tories. But we've not had the same back from Liberal Democrats or from Labour, and they haven't stood down in the Isle of Wight where we're the best party placed to beat the Conservatives. So let no one tell you that the Green Party aren't serious about changing this government, because we're more serious than anyone is. But in Cambridge, the Conservatives are not going to win. They don't have a single councillor. So here you can vote for what you believe in. You can vote for the party you think's best placed to send someone to Parliament who's going to make those big decisions on saving the NHS, saving the climate, and protecting our place in Europe. And I'm glad to say that's what the Green Party are pledging to do. And here you can vote for what you believe in. So I hope you will back us on June the 8th. Thank you very much.